Welcome. It's nice to see everybody. Usually I do Zoom, so it sort of feels nice to be here in the church for a change. It's always so uplifting and light. So as Nancy said, our theme is aligning our will. And I went back and looked, and it seems like I've done a number of talks around the theme of will. So I was thinking, there must be something I need to learn from that power that I haven't learned yet because it keeps coming up. So, what is aligning our will? Well, we only have two choices when it comes to aligning our will, because of aligning with what? So there's only two choices. It's aligning our will with God, or as the Course in Miracles says, the Holy Spirit, and aligning our will with the ego. Obviously, we're here in this physical plane, so much of the time we align our will with the ego. I'm going to use some of the concepts from one of the Course in Miracles lessons, and that is lesson 74, titled, "There is no will but God's." From the first paragraph, God's is the only will. When you have recognized this, you have recognized that your will is His. This may sound a little ominous to our ego. In fact, if our ego was reading that, I think this is how the ego would read it. God's is the only will. When you have recognized this, you have recognized that your will is His. It's quite a difference. Is that what we want? I go on to read, the belief that conflict is possible has gone when you align with God's will. Peace has replaced the strange idea that you are torn by conflicting goals. That certainly, if you read that like I just read, from the ego's perspective, you have conflicting goals, right? So, being in alignment with God's will means you no longer react from a place of fear, but from a place of peace. That is God's will for us, is peace. And at the core of who we are God's will. But we are expressing here on this planet, and so we tend to align ourselves many times with the ego. The ego keeps us conflicted through fear. So our whole existence on this earth is to align and begin to align or realign with God's will, which is peace for us. All right, so aligning with God's will means we align our existence, our day-to-day existence, with God's will, with the peace of God. So the first step in aligning with the peace of God is recognizing when we are out of alignment, when we don't have that peace that we want. And if you can at least be aware of when you are not at peace, that is the beginning to aligning yourself with the will of God. It's a very subtle difference when you are not at peace when you are upset, to say, I do not have the peace of God in this situation, and that is what I want, versus I'm upset. It's very subtle. If something happens and I say, well, I'm really upset, versus telling yourself, stopping and telling yourself, I do not have the peace of God in this situation, and that is what I want. And so I'm going to tell a little story on myself that happened this last week or so. So a couple of weeks ago, my garbage cans, I have a garage on the alleyway, and I've always used my garbage cans like everybody else up and down the alleyway. Well, of course, they come along and give us these huge, ugly, big blue bins, right? I'm like, okay, I have no place to put it in my garage. I can't get it in my garage. It's just going to have to sit out here. You know, okay, I can deal with that. You know, it's more garbage space than I need. I can deal with it. Okay. Well, then about a week and a half ago, they came around, Republic Service came around and picked up the garbage cans from the alleyway and put them out front with a note that said, for service, place your garbage bin here. Well, of course, I don't have a driveway. I don't have, a garage in the front. So I blow up, right? I am just like livid. I called them, and complained, and the woman was very nice, so I wasn't too hard on her. But to keep that upset, everybody I saw, I was, well, do you have a garage on the alleyway? Did you get a big blue bin? My neighbor across the street, he has a driveway and everything. He came over one day, he goes, whose big blue bin is that sitting on the street? Because I have no place else to put it. Oh, well, this is what happened. And he goes, I know it, and so he starts in, I don't have any place to put mine either. So, and I recognized it was upsetting to me, very upsetting to me. And here's an interesting little correlation I've noticed is that when I get really riled up over something, something happens to my car and it has to go in for service. Almost every time. That's how my anger expresses. It comes out in my poor car. So, and that's what happened. So, it's a subtle difference for me to say, oh my God, I'm upset about this matter, versus if I had just stopped and said, okay, I'm not at peace here. I don't have the peace of God. How can I get that peace that I want? So being out of alignment with God is being out of alignment with something within you. This whole garbage can thing is I am out of alignment with something within me. Some deep-seated fear within myself. It has nothing to do with Republic Services. And whenever I'm upset, it has nothing to do with maybe what somebody else told you or said to you. So that person upset me, or that company upset me, or that thing upset me is not a valid comment, because it has nothing to do with anybody else except you. Everything can be pulled back to yourself. Everything. The conflict is already in you. So I've been listening to these podcasts by a Dr. Chatterjee, who is out of the UK. And the last one for this season He interviewed a fellow, his name is Peter Crone. The name of the podcast is Feel Better, Live More, and he's an MD, as I said, in the UK. So this last one I was listening to is just phenomenal, and it's the second time Dr. Chatterjee has had Peter Crone on his podcast because he's just so well received what he says. And so his comment was this, and if we can just ask ourselves this one question when we're upset, it will make all the difference in aligning ourselves with the peace of God. So here's the question. What is it about my beliefs that are in conflict with someone else's self-expression? What is it about my beliefs that are in conflict with someone else's self-expression? I thought that was really wonderful. He's not saying, what is it about somebody else's self-expression that is in conflict with the way I think? No. It's what is it about my beliefs that are in conflict with somebody else's self-expression? Very subtle. I thought that was just amazing way to think of that. When we're upset, if we can go to that question and ask ourselves that question, then we can begin to unravel the deep-seated reactions that we just automatically go to. So being a victim in any way says you've aligned yourself with the ego's will. And our ego's will is a result of us absorbing and formulating perceptions from our parents, our friends, the news media, whatever, experiences of past life, present life. So again, one of the thoughts from Peter Crone is our reactions are bred into us. They are now part of our DNA, just from the fact that our parents react a certain way or reacted a certain way. They got that from their parents who reacted a certain way, and so on and so forth. So these reactions are what formulate our culture and our society sometimes. And so they're bred into us, into our DNA. This is not to blame them or anybody, but it's just to show that how deeply our reactions are seated within us and within our psyche, and how difficult sometimes it is to change our reactions so that we can align with the peace of God. It doesn't happen overnight. And it takes a lot of work. I mean, that's why we're here. That's our requirement, really, for this lifetime, is to align with the peace of God, and we do it over and over and over. So aligning or practicing our alignment is a daily practice, like meditation. You know, I view meditation as a deep communication with our higher self, God, a higher being, what have you, but it's more of a communication, whereas aligning with the peace of God is being the peace of God, being the love of God versus anger. So it's being aware of our reactions that we all have to any kind of upset. And it's not a matter of saying, oh, I don't care. You know, I can deal with this. Some upset comes up. I don't care about it. That's not being truthful. We all care about whatever situation we've gotten ourselves into. We care. We're human. We care. But aligning then is recognizing that something within me was triggered, resulting in a generally negative emotion. And then being able to stop in that moment of recognizing that something within me has been triggered and evaluating it and saying, there must be another way to look at this. Help me, Divine Spirit that I am, to look at this differently. Help me to look at this through the eyes of peace and calm. It is only through aligning our will with God's, the will of peace, that we can dissolve some of these conflicts within us. So do not think that once you're feeling good and you're feeling at peace, that that's the end of it. Yeah, you know, if it was the end of it, you would probably be dead. Because we're here to learn lessons, right? And if you think that, okay, well, I've done it. I'm at peace. I've been at peace for 2 days now, so I'm done. You know, that's not it. You will be presented with more opportunities to align yourself with the peace of God. So pay attention to specific conflicts that tend to return in your life over and over again, be it a certain type of person or a situation like your car having to go to the shop all the time, etc. Maybe a difficult person shows up in your life where you have to deal with that kind of person. Again, I'm going to give you a quote from Peter Crone. I think this is so funny. Have you ever noticed that if you look at where all your problems are in your life, there you are too? It seems obvious, right? That, yeah, okay, but we don't think of it that way. Wherever your problems are in your life, you're right in the middle of them, because they all come from you. So whenever you're not at peace, you have misaligned your will with the ego and not God's will and not the peace of God. So the important thing is to always be aware. That's really the number one step that we can take, is to work towards stopping when we're upset. When I was so upset about the garbage can, did I stop and say, wait, I am not at peace here, and that is what I want. What can I do to align myself? How can I be to align myself with that peace and to allow this issue, what I feel like is an issue, to dissolve itself so that I am at peace? We have to get to that point where we can stop and say, I want the peace of God. That's the most important thing in my life. I want the peace of God. So I'm going to end with a sentence from paragraph 6 of lesson 74. It says, joy characterizes peace. By this experience, will you recognize that you have reached it? The more joy you feel, the more you know you are at peace. And the more freer you will be. So seek to align your will with God and be the peace that you are. Thank you.